Welcome to What's Going On. I'm Kanenhariyo. I'm going to be the host of this show for the next little while, and these two have no idea why they're here. Okay, so a quick synopsis of what happened. I don't know, 6 months ago, I was driving down the highway coming from my home community of Tyendinaga. I'm a Mohawk from there, and I'm Bear Clan. And I was on my way here to Six Nations, where I live with my wife and 5 beautiful kids. And I was stopped at a routine MTO truck and trailer inspection with my old pickup truck and my old trailer. And they wanted to check out all my paperwork and check out make sure everything was up to par or whatever. And in the process of that, they ended up seizing, with the assistance of the OPP, actually it was the OPP who did it, 150 cases of manufactured cigarettes that were inside our economy. And about a week prior to that happening, the Confederacy Council had made a public statement, and they said that they were 100% not going to support or allow for Bill C-10 to be applicable to their people, and they encouraged their people to continue participating in the tobacco trade. So I took that as a clear indication that my people and my laws and governance is saying go ahead, and so I moved forward. Well, anyways, I called you guys here because I want to do a story about it. I got a $629,000 fine. They're asking for 6 months in jail. And I went to the Crown. I went to my first day of court, and there was no judge at the courthouse. So I got to speak with the Crown. I ended up leaving the courthouse with no fines or charges, free to go, because they had forfeited their right to be able to lay any fines or charges on me. They subsequently refined me. But I had said to the Crown that in the event that this thing moved forward, that I wanted it dealt with in accordance to our treaty relationship. That my whole life, my elders and my people said, we're not Canadians. And we're Kanyene'haka and we're Haudenosaunee, and we have a treaty relationship, the Silver Covenant chain and the Two Row Wampum, and the Two Row we brought to them, and the Silver Covenant chain they brought to us, and that's the mechanism of our international relationship as allies.
And is it safe to say that you want to use the Two Row Times as a way to have that conversation, or that we can find a way to tell that story to large numbers of people that may want to hear about it?
Well, yeah. I'd like to use the Two Row Times because the Two Row's ethics and its policy are associated with the very question that I want to raise. So I asked the Crown, I said, I want this addressed in accordance to our treaty relationship. And the Crown said to me, and she was really cool about it, like she wasn't being nasty, her body language and her was pretty cool. She was just like, I don't have the tools to deal with it that way. And me being me, I said, well, yeah, I understand. After 100 years of genocide, you didn't keep up with the processes and protocols. And so I just kind of giggled, and she didn't giggle, but but it is what it is. And I said, well, what do we go from here then? And she said, well, you're going to have to raise this constitutional question. And she said that her through legal aid, that they would be legally obligated to provide me with financial support to raise the question and get the proper lawyers to be able to do that. And so I'm pulling together a team, and I believe that this story needs to be told. And I want to know if we're still friends, if our nation and the Crown and subsequently Canada are still friends and still allies, or whether that friendship's over and we're enemies. In the Kanyene'haka world, it's kind of one or the other. I want to know if we're still friends. So I got you guys here because I have no idea how to do this, and I want your help. And I want to do something really cool and really positive, and I want people to to be aware of what's happening and what are the like implications and what's the historical significance. And I have no idea what I'm doing aside from the fact that I was taught that this is our relationship, and I'm feeling like it's being abused.
I think the biggest question that you'll face is whether or not we're still a sovereign nation. And with doing discussions about sovereignty and with people who are anti Six Nations, the first thing I will ask is if we were sovereign in the year 1450.
Right.
In the year 1550, were we sovereign then? And you get them. Like that's like a winning. That's like a chess move where it's like check, and it's basically a checkmate because however they respond, it's a checkmate.
Yeah.
They should answer yes, you were sovereign, unless they believe in the doctrine of discovery that says that we didn't have souls and that we're animals.
And we're animals, yeah.
If they answer no, you weren't sovereign then that makes them like
racist.
something worse.
Yeah.
Believe in eugenics.
Worse than confused.
And then if they answer yes, you were sovereign then you put the burden of proof on them or put the onus on them to say, so how did we lose our sovereignty? You know, I've done the research and the historical analysis to be able to deconstruct that. But I think why should I, let them benefit from my research and study? Just put it to them. Explain to me, as if I know nothing, how we lost our sovereignty. And I think that's a really strong point to come from. That's something that I've relied on in debates about this very issue. Mm-hmm. Because the first thing that an average Canadian will say is they'll say, "You're Canadian. Let me see your ID. You have a driver's license, don't you?" Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. That's only as far as their minds can go. And I think that no matter how this gets resolved, I don't know if this is good or bad for you, but I think that there's some positivity here, no matter which way the cards will fall. Because if this doesn't get resolved in the proper way for you, like at this time, it's just going to be. It's just all they're doing is just putting it under the rug, and they're putting it on the back burner to be dealt with at a later stage when we have more numbers. Mm-hmm. So I think it's in Canada's best interests to deal with this situation in the proper way today. Otherwise, all they're doing is just making a bigger burden for the next generation of Canadians, the next crown, the next governor general to deal with, the next queen. Mm-hmm. Like maybe Harry or Harry's kids or Prince William is going to have to deal with this if she doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's the perspective I'm looking at, like with a kind of a wide view of this situation, is that it's going to be dealt with properly eventually. Yeah,
whether it gets dealt with this time, we'll see. All right, but I'm going to raise a question because some people have said to me, "Well, isn't that kind of dangerous? Like you're going to take on this gigantic court case, and what if it goes bad? Why don't you try to find, some sort of like technicality and get it thrown out or get it dropped or whatever?" And to be quite honest with you, my position is going to stay steadfast that what good is that going to do for the next generations coming? That if I do that's all I'm doing is stuffing it under the rug and not trying to force the issue. And so maybe my grandkids or my children or my great grandchildren will be the ones that will be trying to raise this question, And so I feel like it's important for me and for coming generations of all of our people to raise these questions and to get it addressed and get it solved. The Supreme Court of Canada has said that the treaties are there and they can't be broken, and they have to be interpreted the way in which Indigenous people understand them, and the government can't find ways to circumvent them. And they have to stay inside the spirit and intent of those treaty relationships. And so the documentation regarding the Silver Covenant is so huge, so huge, and it has to be put forward. We have to address it.
I don't think that most people think of Indian treaties the same way as they do of other treaties. There's no time limit on them.
Yeah.
Imagine if it was like 1960, and we know what the Treaty of Versailles is after World War II. Mm-hmm. Imagine if the Germans were like, I think we're done with this treaty now. It's 10 years ago. It's 20 years in the past. With treaties are international.
They kind of did do that. They had it after World War I, and then World War II.
Yeah,
like, we're going to get rid of this thing. That was Hitler's thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing with treaties is that they are mutual agreements between two nations.
Yeah.
And it's odd that they think we're Canadians now, because you can't make treaties with your own people.
Yeah.
It's just impossible to make a treaty with your subjects or with your citizens. It's an international affair.
And you're still here, but I think the problem is that for most Canadians, they don't have a lot of interaction with Onkwehonweh people, with indigenous people. And that to me is one of the things that I'm excited about, the idea of doing this as a YouTube channel where we're following this specific issue, because I think that there will be an interest from Canadians and from indigenous people across North America who are going to want to see how is this issue playing out. Mm-hmm. Because the issue that we're talking about is such a massive one, like the government's passing of Bill C-10, which for anybody that's not familiar with it is an attempt to shut down the main part of the native economy that is completely independent of the Canadian system, and that is leading to more and more independence for people, more and more economic autonomy, and the government's trying to crush that with Bill C-10, and the major question about it is that I think most people are like, either it'll be resolved if they come in on a raid, in which case the general sentiment from practically everybody is they'll be met with force. That is not all right. Mm-hmm. Or it'll be dealt with in the courts in precisely such an issue. And I think that I think you're in an excellent position to make that argument. And the reality is they stopped you from moving tobacco from your home on one reserve to taking it to a home on another reserve. Mm-hmm. And you didn't stop, you weren't giving it out along the way, you were moving it from one community to another. Mm-hmm. on a path and a trail that you've been using for time immemorial.
Well,
I think a good analogy, if I could interject, was imagine if there was a large ship transporting goods from Hawaii to the United States. And if Japan just comes in the middle and says, "Oh, you guys are under arrest. Come with us.
We're seizing that. That's contraband. That's not okay in our country."
We passed a law.
There's no Nintendos allowed, and you've got a shipload of Nintendos. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
They have the right stamp on them. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It's crazy. And what's even crazier is that the two communities that we're talking about, I mean, they're not even reserves. These are two negotiated tracts of lands that were set aside where non-Indigenous people weren't to settle. That were set aside just for us because of the losses that we had as allies with the Crown when we fought against Americans.
Yeah.
And it clearly states it in the documents, allies.
It's an international
agreement.
Yeah, those lands and those areas that were set aside as an international agreement between the Crown and the Mohawk Nation.
Essentially an apology for signing the Peace Treaty of Paris and leaving us out.
Yeah.
And you can't say the Peace Treaty of Paris is old and gone, and that's a long time ago. Well, there's still countries in the mouth of the St. Lawrence.
And they tried to do that to stop Tecumseh from setting up, stopped both Tecumseh and Brant before, both of whom had the intention of an independent Indian state between as a buffer between those two colonial powers. Mm-hmm. Or at least, and that's how the colonial powers also viewed it, and then they were like, well, okay, maybe we can not have that happen if we give you the Grand River Tract and if we have the various tracts around Tyendinaga.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's apparent that like not everyone will have all the facts.
No.
But I think that we'll provide links. We'll try to educate people who are interested in the show.
Yeah,
as
I would
we
like
follow
to.
your progress.
Yeah, and what I would like to do is I would also like to bring on some of the people that are assisting, like historical research and maybe even my lawyers, and like I'll argue with them here because they don't like what I'm having to say. Because what I'm saying is my lawyer said to me, "Wait a minute, you're trying to tell me that." Your people can't be charged in the Canadian court system? And I said, yeah, that's exactly right. Mike, it can't be. The only three things that we can be charged with is this the way I understand it, and you know, you're right. As we go through this, there may be stuff that I got wrong, and I'm going to learn as we go. We all are. You know, murder, rape, and theft. Those are the three things that we can be tried for in the sort of the British Admiral law, and those are the three things that we can try Canadian subjects that do those things to us. Mm-hmm. And everything else is in amongst our own system and our own way to deal with it. And so my thoughts on this issue, and I'm bringing it forward, that if they've got an issue with me participating in an economic endeavor that my government and my people are saying go ahead and pursue and build, then what they're actually saying is the Canadian government's got an issue with this, and the relationship's tarnished, and we need to polish it. And so I want them to polish it.
Can we talk a bit about tobacco? Because I don't think that I don't think that a lot of people necessarily are aware of the significance of it or of what's going on in relation to the tobacco.
Just
laws.
hold right here if we could have an edit moment.
Yeah.
Did you guys plan how long it is supposed to go?
No, but we got another. Depends how indulgent Gary's feeling. But he wanted to be out at.
He wanted to be out of here at 7
or
Well,
7:30.
7:30.
Before 7:30.
Yeah.
Do you think shorter is sweeter, Gary? Or
Always. Especially if you want to be on the internet.
Yeah.
I almost could go into like stay
Section
tuned for
2.
next part.
Yeah,
We're going to talk
yeah.
about tobacco and kind of segue into it.
All right.
Some wrapping it
So
up.
why don't we wrap it up?
Okay.
That gives the introduction. All we were doing is
Yeah.
introduction, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, so you guys are going to help me?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's do this then. We're going to do this. Come and join us and follow along, and
So maybe we want to each.
let's
have
find
a
out what's going on.
Bid on that or something, or do we?
If it's still taping, one thing to remember is I wanted to make a point about blaming the victim, because there'll be many Canadians. Like, it'd be awesome if during our show, just record this.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome if during our show we could get like maybe the most anti person. Like, maybe imagine if we get Gary McHale.
Oh, absolutely.
Or like Gary Horsnell to come on and just raise these huge objections. I think one thing that they would raise is, well, basically blaming the victim. Like, why didn't you guys have this in place? Or how come you're allowing this to happen? Or you've been in courts before. Or if you guys are sovereign, how come you let the RCMP take you over in 1920?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they can bring up all these points, and it's all blaming the victim. I think that if 90% of us didn't die from smallpox, we wouldn't be having these issues. There'd be like a million or 2 million of us, and we'd have like everything in place, and we would be able to cope with the colonization a lot better according to our own terms. So I think that's one point. I don't know if we can use what I just said there, but that's a whole.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole other point that I want to make sure gets brought up in this, and that's that. Well, you got a driver's license. Well, you got a birth certificate. Well, you got a this, and it all stems from a certain time in history, and it's bothered me ever since this was said. The Prime Minister of Canada gets up in front of everyone, gets on camera and says, you know, this was a dark time in Canadian history, and we apologize to the residential schools. Yeah. Okay, so that's 1924, is that dark time in history. Well, for Haudenosaunee people in Onkwehonweh, 1924 isn't just the dark time because of residential schools. The whole era is a dark time. It's the dark time when they cut us off from going to the UN to make a complaint against them for what they've done to us. It's a dark time when they unilaterally passed their legislation. They passed in their legislation that they're no longer going to recognize our governance structure, and they implement the Indian Act, the most racist document on the planet in terms of control of a population. I mean,
and then they set up a colonial puppet government.
And then they stage a series of attacks on us. Like, okay, so if you don't register your children at birth, then we're going to assume that these children have no parents, and because they're Indians or ward of the crown, we're going to take them. So what do? You protect your kids and you register them, But before that, what do they do? 1924. This is the same time. This is the same year. All of this, the dark time in Canadian history. Yeah, it was dark, all right. They put a military base in my home community of Tyendinaga, and they put an RCMP headquarters here at Six Nations, and they run out the traditional government, and the same year they put a police military presence in Onkwehonweh, and they kill one of the chiefs there for resisting. And so that spreads across, and everybody's like, whoa, hey, they're going to kill us. So this dark time has impacted all of these sort of things. So,
and they stole the wampum belts.
They took all the belts, and they took,
any money, resources, everything.
Yeah. So there's these things that are impacting us now. Like, okay, so why you got a driver's license? Well, how do I move around without one? Well, why do you have a birth certificate? Well, what happens to my children if I don't register them? Well, what was my mother thinking? She was thinking, I don't want to lose my kids, right? Oh, shoot. So we've had 100 years of this massive oppression on us, and it's genocide.
I think that you say it's a dark time, or the president or the prime minister said it was a dark time. That's good. I think that seems like the scope of this show is twofold. One, that will shine a light into this dark time, for educational purposes. And secondly, I think you're kind of I hate to say, a guinea pig.
Thanks, John.
Maybe we can call this like the guinea pig show.
The guinea pig show.
Three little people.
Because you're going in and you're like a test subject on scientific experiment.
But how much better is that than the alternative, which is like you see something come across our news desk at the Two Row Times. A 46-year-old man from Onkwehonweh was arrested in London. He had 2 cases of cigarettes in his truck, and his truck was impounded, and he's facing jail. And they don't release the guy's name, and he's suffering. He just I don't know any more details other than that press release. But the alternative of not getting this information out is that it's just there's a sickness within the Canadian body politic, and there are people that are suffering. And we need to shine that light. Yeah. And we have now access to new technology. We're filming a TV show in Seth's living room on a few hours' notice. And and let's see what we can do with this. Let's see what we can do with the social media. With tweet at us. See it on.
Share it.
Yeah. Because the man you brought up, if nothing is said, Sun Media. Toronto Star makes him look like a criminal. Yeah, there's a criminal who was caught with contraband tobacco. He should be in jail. That's what the average
because contraband tobacco, equals guns on the streets and deaths, right?
So if Seth says nothing and just puts his head down and begs in front of the judge, criminal. That's the first thing that Canadians will think. But we're here to say no, not criminal,
and we're saying. Wait a minute, we're not even Canadians.
Yeah.
This doesn't apply to us.
It's like it's some kind of crazy Twilight Zone.
What is going on? All right. Well, I think we're done.
Yeah, man.
That's quick.
I guess stay tuned, follow us. We're going to be doing constant updates, tracking Seth's progress, talking with awesome people.
And getting the word out there, what's really going on.
See you next time. I'm so conscious about this then becoming a gang sign. It's like, they're flashing a gang sign.
The contraband sign.
Yeah.
That was good.
If we were still recording, just pretend that it was still recording. Is it still recording, Gary?
Yep.
Excellent. The one thing about the cover of the Two Row Times this week that I just think is such an important angle.
Never got one yet.
Yeah, I don't know if I got
What?
it in the car. Anyway, the
fuck are you
picture,
talking about?
The picture of on the cover of the
Should
Two Row
show one.
Times. Yeah, we should. And of course, we don't have one
Just
here.
press pause.
No, we don't. No, we're going to superimpose it on the screen at this moment.
Show. Okay.
Yeah, it would, but they're in the car. So the point is, it's a cartoon drawn by Don Jackson, who did the Spirits of Wampum, and it's showing the New York governor with his hands around the throat of an Onkwehonweh person.
I did
And it's
see
saying,
that.
don't and being like, stop choking us. And
Yeah.
our hashtag was, or the headline that we came up with was, we can't breathe. And the connection that John Kane made in his column this week was that Eric Gardner, who was the black man choked to death by the New York City police, he was arrested he was known to police, or the police harassment was stemming from the fact that he was selling loose. And it's all about tobacco, and it's all about that, and that. So that connection in terms of how these things are playing out and what police are doing, heavily militarized police, and how people are getting, selling cigarettes in order to survive. That's all tied into this narrative, and we should go find out what's going on in New York State.
Yeah.
For sure.
Man.
For sure.
Imagine if we had the carte blanche budget, we just go do one of these with like Eric Gardner's family, and
There's a way to do it.
like, man, we're sovereign. Like we should.
We just
Imagine
need
the
to
things
find
we
some
could do if we
sponsors for
connect.
the podcast is what we need to do if you're out there.
Yeah, man. Great.
Alrighty.
Till the next time.
Till the next time. Thanks for watching.